Hey guys, Shane here, so welcome to this inbox review of Italeri's 135th LCVP with US Infantry, kit number 6524. So this was from their D-Day anniversary set from 2004, so therefore this kit came out in 2004, which is basically a rebox of their earlier release of their Higgins boat. Not entirely sure what year that came out, probably it was like the mid-2000s, so it's not too old of a kit. And this particular set comes with the boat crew of 3 guys, as well as 25 assault troops, if you will, to replicate a full assault boat section, if you will. So you could model basically a vignette or a diorama in a box with this. So as you can see, the box is immensely deep. So here's my hand for reference. We have an immensely attractive box art. I think this is one of the prettiest box arts I've seen. Fantastic box art. We have some of their D-Day logos. I believe there's other kits in this range that are still floating about online. I'm sure they've probably done a 2016 D-Day thing too, as it seems Italeri tends to return to the kind of D-Day or Normandy setting again and again. Again, we have, as I was saying, we have a very deep box. We have some photo callouts or photos of the contents. So we have the Higgins boat or LCVP, and as well as photos of the 25-man assault section or boat section, as well as the 3 crewmen. Now we're going to get into the crewmen and the infantrymen in more detail in a few moments. On this side of the box, we just have a very simple painting guide for the infantry and a little bit of history on the boat, and on the back is blank. So let's have a look-see and see what we get inside the box. So removing the lid, we are greeted with our instructions. Again, we're going to go into these in proper detail in a minute. A simple loose sheet, which is for the infantry. Our decal sheet does have a carrier film to protect it, but it's literally unbagged. And then we are met with 3 large sets of bagged sprues. The first one is this single one-piece molding of the actual landing craft hull itself. And as you can see, it's massive. I think it's about 31 centimeters in length. So again, hand for reference. We do have like detail on the underside of the hull. We do have what appears to be, actually no, these are just indents on the plastic from it being in contact with the sprues, so they're not raised marks. So that's our rather impressive single piece hull. We get this monster bag of sprues, which are our infantrymen. I believe there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 10 sprues of infantry specific parts. So we have our 25 infantrymen and their personal weapons and equipment. Again, we'll have a proper look at these and see just how well detailed they are and see are they actually usable. And then the last bag, we have our actual hull fittings. So our various different detail, inner details for the actual cargo compartment or troop compartment for the actual landing craft, as well as some of the crewmen for the actual, or boat crew for the actual ship. And then we have a single bag with some rope for our various different pulleys for lowering and closing the ramp. So Italeri instructions can be kind of simple. They're often just kind of black and white exploded diagram. They're for the most part relatively easy to follow. They can be a bit tricky at times, but this should be okay, and landing craft shouldn't be too complicated to put together. We do get a very, very small history in English, French, Italian, Spanish, Dutch, and German. So you do have to get a little bit of history if you're not familiar with the Higgins boat and the various different places they were deployed. We have a very simple exploded diagram, or should I say, a very simple parts map, as well as some color callouts for their own color range. Again, if you just quickly go online and Google a color converter chart, you'll find the equivalent colors from your own paint systems of choice. So I'll probably either paint this up in Vallejo or Tamiya colors, haven't quite decided yet. So step 1, we are beginning immediately with the lower hull. So we're adding some details such as the prop shaft and the prop itself, as well as the rudder and the keel. So if nice and simple, again, not too busy instruction manual, let's hope it stays that way. Then we're moving on to step 2, and we're coming into the bulwark, which is the basically inner frame, if you will, for the landing craft. So we have these large side panels, and then we have these various support struts that will bolt onto the side. Now, when I was looking at these parts, there are injection pin marks that will have to be filled, but we'll have a proper look at those when we get to the plastic. Step 3, we're doing the exact same on the other side again with the bulwarks. We're also mounting our winch assemblies for the front assault ramps. So again, some care might be taken here just to ensure that you get that to work the way it's meant to. Then we're moving on to the coxswain station, which is where the boat master is, if you will. So very simple, just like a simple helm and throttle, if you will. I imagine these boats were quite simple. Step 5, we're bringing in the various parts of the landing craft interior together. So the 2 side walls, the deck itself, as well as the area where our crew will be found, if you will, the crew compartment, for lack of a better word. And don't really know my naval terminology particularly well, so do bear with me. Step 6, we're doing the upper part of the deck, or the upper hull, that will come down on top. So we have our gun tubs for the 30 cal M1919 machine guns. Again, nice and simple. We have our tie downs when the ship's alongside, either like a mothership or a dock. Nice and simple. Again, these steps are not too busy, which is very good, especially for us armor guys that aren't used to working with these type of kits, you know. So that is no bad thing. So on to step 7, we're doing some more of the wiring, and we're threading the wire through various parts of the upper and lower hull to get the pulley system in order for the landing, or for the assault ramp. So again, take your time just wiring this up to make sure it all works. It'll be interesting to see how well it goes together. Step 9, we're adding some more support struts, as well as the back plate to protect the 2 gunners. I imagine it also acts as a breakwater too if a wave comes in behind the craft, I imagine. Then step 10, we are tying in the boat stops, or the bump stops for the side of the ship, or the side of the landing craft. Again, they're just like spools of rope that are draped over the side of the vessel to stop it from being damaged when the waves slam it against a ship there alongside. Step 11, we are building the very iconic assault ramp, which is quite cool. So we do have little alternatives, so again you might have to do a bit of research just to see what you want to use. Step 12 is broken into several steps, so we have our display plinth, if you will. So if you don't want to put this into a diorama or at sea, you do have the option just like mounting on a simple plinth that you get on most ship models. We are mounting our 30 cal machine guns and gun shield assemblies, as well as our boat crew. We'll see are they any good. From the images I've seen online, the crew are quite simple, but if you just do a quick head swap with a Hornet head or any other like better detailed heads out there, they actually won't look half bad. And then we're also just adding the ramp and wiring it shut. So not too bad. So you're going to be tying a lot of knots in this kit. And then with that, we just move on to the marking guide. Now there's only one marking guide available in this kit, and this is it here. It's very simple, overall grey US Navy. Then we get this, again we have our sprue maps, and these are all our infantry sprues. So we have a weapon sprue with equipment sprues, and here you'll have like things like your BARs, your M1 Garands, your M1 Thompsons, your carbines, your M1919 30 cal machine guns, and including some other cool things like Bandolier torpedoes. I believe there's a flamethrower here somewhere, and I also believe there is a couple of radio sets. And then you have multiple, so a lot of the figures are going to look very samey. So you have 5. So you're basically going to have 5 sprues of the same. So they're all going to look quite the same. But we can mix that up if you choose. Like, you know, you can add a little bit different kit, add a couple of different heads, different helmets, just to break it up. And then on the side, then we have our various different poses. As you can see, they're almost all identical. So you have GI standing with M1 Grand, ammo bearer, so basically a guy with an M1 and an ammo can for the 30 cal. Then we have a chap with some ammo and a Bandolier torpedo. So it's kind of cool. They do have the correct gas masks on their chest. So these bags on their chest are not life jackets. These are actually their gas masks. The life jacket was actually, sometimes they call it the Mae West, was basically a belt that they put on around their waist. It didn't kind of work. What happened if you inflated it and it was too high or too low on your body, it would flip you upside down in the water and drown you. So it wasn't really the best thought out thing in the world. They tried to come up with something that they could just throw on them and then throw off once they hit the beach, hoping that they wouldn't have to deploy them. And once they did in the water, they were in deep trouble. We have an NCO again, just with an M1 Thompson, guy with a slinged M1, BAR gunner, guy holding the folded tripod for the 30 cal, and a 30 cal gunner himself. It also gives us some cool ideas, which I've never thought about this, which it's kind of really obvious now that I think about it. Often you'll see photographs, and you also see in Saving Private Ryan, that a lot of the soldiers have plastic covers or plastic bags tied around their weapons to keep the water and sand out of the actions. And I never really figured out how to do that in scale. And it just tells us to use cling film or food film. I don't know what you guys call it, Stround wrap, I think it's called in America. And just like get enough of that around the gun and then just tie it around. So that's actually kind of cool. That's a nice little touch. So we'll see how well that works. So that's our instructions for our infantrymen. And then we have a very simple, I don't know how well you guys can see it, a very simple decal sheet, should I say. I completely lost my train of thought there. So it's all basically just white numberings, tactical numbers. There does seem to be kind of heavy carrier film on these. So I don't know how well they're going to go down without excessive layers of microsol and set and then gloss layers on top of it to try to kick that carrier film back as much as possible. Now these are printed by a company in Italy. These are not cartograph, which is a bit disappointing, but they should be, hopefully to be okay. So now we're going to move on to the plastic. So we're going to start off with the infantrymen, just because I'm kind of curious to see what type of quality they are. Italeri is boasting that these are 100% new molds, so let's see what 100% new Italeri figure molds look like. So again, they're all bagged, just thrown into one big bag. There's like, what, 10 or 12 sprues in here. In reality, like, they should be bagged in two bags rather than one. So we get 5 sprues of infantrymen, so they're going to be there's going to be basically 5 identical poses in each one. Because there's so many of them in such a confined space, you could probably get away with it. So I'm just going to take 1 sprue of each, and then we also have 5 weapon and equipment sprues as well. So I'm just going to take 1 of each, and we're going to have a proper look to see what type of quality we have here. So starting off just with the figures, the scaling and proportioning is a little bit weird. The legs, as you can see here, are very, very skinny and lanky. And I need something to point with. We have very heavy. So we have very heavy mold lines. We're going to have to be very carefully removed because I'll have them go right through detail and creases. Moving on to the arms, the hands are very chunky. These are very chunky hands. Jesus, like they're a little bit kind of like soft and mushy in detail. And in some cases, like here with this hand holding, I imagine that's meant to be the handle for an ammo can. Again, there's no real line or visible separation between sleeve and hand, so I'm going to have to come in with a Dremel and redefine that if I choose to actually model this as a diorama. Moving on to the tunic, or the torso. Again, we have these Mae West life jacket here. Again, that's nice to see that. That's quite an important D-Day equipment. One thing that is missing from the sleeves, I think it's on their left sleeve, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong. I think it's their left. Or it might be their... Yeah, I think it's their left sleeve. There should be like an armband, like a gizzard here, which is basically for detecting gas. So if you want to make these actually accurate, you're going to probably have to putty or get some tape and cut it to shape and add it to all 25 of them, because every soldier had one on D-Day. At least from every photograph I've seen of the assault troops, they do. Again, with the other leg, I'm not entirely sure how accurate these are. These almost look like jump smocks because the pockets look so big, but I'm sure these are meant to be like the herringbone M43 trousers, if I remember correctly. The heads are not the worst I've ever seen. So the heads are not too bad. They do have some good expression, again, some heavy mold lines, and I'm actually sure these will actually paint up pretty well. So the detail is a little bit spongy and blocky in places. The hands are totally out of scale. Like some of them are absolutely horrific, like you can see here. This big bloody flipper of a hand. So if you really want to, you can start cannibalizing spare hands, or you have molds of hands. But then again, that's the thing about replacing with resin or anything else. There's 25 figures. This will get extortionately expensive if you want to do any type of mass upgrading with aftermarket, if you wanted to bring it to the next level. Another thing of note is on, if it bloody focus, is that if you look at the buttons, again, they're massive. So you might want to make on some of them, make your own buttons. These look like rivets almost. They're way out of scale. So like, yeah, they're kind of what you expect from Italeri, you know, the figures are they're so-so. And I have a feeling because they're giving you 25 figures in one box, they try to do it on the cheap. I'm not saying that they're bad figures in the sense that they're unworkable. They're not. You can make these work. The heads are grand. I actually don't mind the heads too much, you know. You could always mix in a few spare plastic heads from other manufacturers if you wished, just to add a bit more character and a little bit more individualism. If you wanted to go completely mad and bankrupt yourself, you could add bloody Hornet or whatever fucking heads to this. Wouldn't recommend it because you wouldn't have a cent left to your name. But the hands, for me, these, like, that's the kicker. These are massively out of scale hands. Jesus Christ, like. And yes, yeah, I can buy aftermarket handsets. But to get 25 pairs of hands, you know what I mean? Like, often you'll buy what? Like, a resin set of hands are, you know, €8 or €9 for a set of 5. So you're basically paying the price of the kit again just to upgrade the figures. That is kind of silly, and I am not even going to entertain that because, knowing me, I'll talk myself into it. Then we move on to the equipment sprues. So once again, we have our M1 helmets with chin straps molded in. These are shockingly bad. However, one thing I will say, the company Tank, the Russian company Tank, manufacture the exact same helmet in resin, and they're not that expensive. You get them in sets of 7, so buy a couple of sets. And so that's what I would replace. I would replace the helmets. It would be the biggest one I replace, and some of the weapons if you have them in your spare box. We have our gas mask cases, which aren't too bad. They do have these big pins on them again. So the gas mask cases are not too bad either. They do have these very big buttons that look like rivets. Again, you can remove those and make your own, not that difficult. We have our haversacks here, and then the shovels for them are located here. So there's a lot on these sprues. We have I believe these are our first aid or morphine pouches. Again, these are massively overscaled. They should be about a third smaller. These are monstrously big. We have some wire cutters. Again, that's the bipod for the BAR. Again, we have some M1 carbine. I know a lot of people in America call these carbines. In Europe, they're normally just referred to as carbines, so that's just how we pronounce it. So don't get too excited with that. So the carbine mags they don't seem too bad. They're again a little bit overscaled, but nothing too major. We have our M1919 machine gun. It's okay. It's okay. Again, the weapons seem to be kind of weirdly scaled. It's a bit chunky, but it's not too bad. It helps you guys can see it. The bar looks a bit off, but it's not too bad. Then we have the bipod, or should I say the tripod, for the M1919. Here's one for you that they don't mention. So you actually get some other weapon options that aren't mentioned in the instructions. We have a 60mm mortar with on-deployed bipod. that's kind of cool. I actually wouldn't mind modifying one of the figures to be like a mortar crew and like, you know, build a fest with the mortar tubes in it. Then we have the little cute itty bitty 60mm mortar rounds. We have our bazooka again with the back with 2-piece again, so you're going to add the front sight to it. It's not too bad. It's actually, that bazooka isn't the worst I've seen. We actually have a flamethrower, again not marked, so you could do a bit of modifying and have a guy with a flamethrower. We have guys with a radio set, again that's not in the instructions. The radio isn't too bad actually. Then we have our Bandolore torpedoes, which are like these demolition charges that you can link together, set them off, and they'll blast through a stretch of barbed wire, for example. The BAR is, yeah, it's soft. That's not a BAR. That's a BAR shaped piece of plastic. If you have a spare one from a Tamiya box or a Dragon kit, use that instead. The ammo cans, again, they're okay. They're a bit overscaled, but if you have like any Academy ammo cans lying around, I would use those over that. Here's our grenades, or pineapple grenades. These look okay actually. What's this? Imagine that's a pouch. These are more carbine pouches, I believe. The M1 Garands again have the same kind of issues that the BAR has. Again, they're a little bit soft in detail. They're not too bad. These are actually quite usable. The Thompson gun, it's not too bad either. Again, it's a little bit soft, but again, it's quite usable. The BAR is the big one that probably has to be replaced. It's just too soft. Again, if you have him standing in the middle of the boat surrounded by other like infantrymen, you're not going to notice. So you do have workarounds. We have an unholstered 1911 Colt here, 45. We have a holstered version here. It looks a little bit underscale and the shape's a bit off. Then we have our ammo pouches for the M1 Garands. They're fine, actually they're okay. They're not too bad at all. We have different shovels. We have like separate shovels, and then we have our kind of T-shovels for the back of the haversacks. So that is the weapon sprue. Also we have bayonets in their sheets here as well. So that's the weapon and equipment sprues. And again, if you're happy just to operate outside the box and things like, you know, little niggles like, you know, detail being a bit soft doesn't bother you, you're going to be spoiled for choice with this. So that is the sprues for the infantry. So as you can see, they're simplified and they're a bit soft on soft in detail in places, but they're not too bad. So let's actually move on to the boat itself. So I'm sure you guys are kind of getting tired of me just harping on about figures, but hey, I'm a figure painter, and the figures were the main selling point for this kit, you know. And in all, they're very usable. And if you have like a load of like spare bits from other kits, use them, and you'll really get a lot out of those kits. So here's our landing craft hull, again, one piece. We do have a lot of detail, we do have some detail at least on the underside of the hull. Again, you're not going to really see any of it, especially if you put it onto a diorama base. You know, all this is going to be hidden. We do have some casting plugs that'll have to be kind of cut and filed away. Again, not a biggie. We have basic rib detail and bolt detail here. Quite actually a heavy bit of plastic. Some very minor burring on the rear here. If you just run a file over that once or twice, it'll be good to go. Again, nothing crazy. This is actually quite impressive. Not seeing any warping, which is actually quite impressive, because the plastic in this is actually quite thick. And often when you mold, you know, as you can see here, like it's by no means a small kit, you know. So by the fact that there's no like warping or anything on that, that's actually very impressive. So fair play to Italeri on that. So that's our lower hull, should I say. And then we move on to the large bag of sprues, which is the rest of the boat, or the rest of the Higgins boat. So let's have a proper look and see what type of detail we get. Now I'm a bit worried that we're going to have a lot of rivet pin marks that we're going to have to fill, but hopefully it won't be too bad. He says as he looks at loads of pin marks. So again, individually, or everything's bagged in one big bag. So we're just going to go through this bit by bit and see what we get. So I'm just going to start with the upper part of the boat. So we have a lot of very nice engraved detail here. So lots of nice recesses. Again, These will take washes immensely well. We've got a nice rivet detail. It's not the crispest detail I've seen in the world, but it is by no means bad detail. You can always tell like the quality of a molding. You look at things like a helm or a steering wheel, and it's not massively overscaled. So that's actually quite impressive. So that gives you an idea that the quality of molding is not bad. We have various other little details inside it just to utilize this space. We have the command or the control column here for the helm and the throttle. It's just basically a rectangle with some squares and circles on it. I imagine it's quite simple. Here's the top of it, again just with a little bit of detail. Detail is a little bit simplified in places, but then again, it's such a big model that everything will kind of pull together and work together. We have some of our pulley systems here for our ramp and what have you. And then we have this plate here, which is a part of the front ramp that can drop down. I imagine that's just for better visibility for the boat crew, so they can actually see what they're looking at. And then obviously if they're taking fire, they can fold it up, or for just like ease of getting people off the ship or off the craft. So then we move on to this sprue here, and we have our first crewman here. So you can tell the crew apart from the infantry because they have big life jackets. Detail's okay, again very heavy seam lines that'll have to be filed back. I'll probably have to come in with a Dremel and just define some lines here just to give a bit of separation. But detail is not terrible. The head isn't actually that bad. Where is it? If I can find where we were. There you go. Head isn't terrible. The helmet's a bit weird. But if you just have like a spare head in your spare bits box, you can just replace it. Again, the hands are a bit big. That's the only real thing. But again, if it doesn't bother you, there's no need to replace it. Then we have some of the bump stops here for the side of the craft. I actually have no idea what these are called. I'll probably Google it after and find out. We have the world's smallest 30 cal box for the two 30 cal machine guns on the back of the craft. Like that's meant to be a 30 cal ammo box. That looks like it's like a 2.2 ammo box. Jesus, it's kind of weird how like Italeri scales things. That it's almost like they're trying to cut down on plastic waste, if you will, by basically just cutting corners. Then the 30 cal itself, unfortunately it's got the gun cradle molded into it for the actual rear of the craft, so that's going to make like replacing this with a nicer 30 cal quite difficult. But the muzzle is molded solid, so you're going to have to drill that out if you want to have a hollow barrel. Not difficult to do. It's not the best detailed 30 cal machine gun I've seen in the world, but once the shield's in front of it, you're not going to see too much, and have the gunner behind it as well. We have what looks to be a bilge pump. Kind of simple, but kind of cool. I have no idea what a lot of these things are meant to be. We have some of the seats, again, for the weapon tubs for the gunners. We have the weapon shield, which is just basically a big plate of steel. On the real one, they would have been pretty simple. And then we have these large beams of plastic, which are going to be the bulwarks, I'd imagine, for the hull, if that's what they're called. If not, I'm going with that because it sounds cool. So yeah, the big thing that I'd probably replace is these wonky, ridiculously underscaled 20 round machine gun belt boxes, because that's how small that is. You probably fit about 6 rounds into that actually, or scale rounds. So that is that sprue. Again, also we have like our life ring here. So like detail is not too bad, you know. It's kind of clunky in places, and it's a bit kind of soft and chunky in others. I've no doubt that when this thing builds up, it will actually build up quite nice. Because from all the images I've seen online of these are quite impressive. And we also have 2 of these sprue, and then we have this larger sprue. Again, it's quite big. So we have our deck here. Some really nice engraved panel lines here. So again, that's going to take a wash really well. And again, because we have these nice defined panels, you can do some really interesting modulation techniques, you know, doing little different filters and tints just to make them a little bit different. Now, if you put the crew or some cargo on that, you probably won't see any of it, but nonetheless, it will more help establish the character of the boat, which is always important. We have these very simple display plinths here. They're just basically 2 big chunks of I-beam, basically, for lack of a better word. We have some piping or conduit here. Again, I have no idea what that's for. Some navy stuff. Then we have, which is basically the front part of the ramp. So this is like the breakwater, or the bow plane, if you will. Then we actually have the ramp itself. And I was kind of getting worried that we'd have big pin marks in places we didn't want them. And so far, it looks like we've kind of gotten away with it, which is good. So again, we have the big ramp, nice detail again, very impressively big piece of plastic. And then this plate here will fit on to the inner element here. Again, now we're seeing a bit of pin marks, but because it's flat, it won't be hard to like fill and sand that. We also have a few pin marks on this rear plate here, just inside here. Again, nothing too crazy, a bit of acrylic putty, will fill them in seconds. Then we have our keel, or whatever the hell this is called, which runs on the bottom of the boat. I think that's called a keel. So yeah, and then obviously our single proper screw here. So that is the majority of the details for the hull, and then we have one final sprue. So we have the actual hull sides that run along here. So again, these are a little bit confusing, but you can kind of make out the profile. Now there is some pin marks like here. They seem to be kind of in certain points along this that will have to be filled. That is a little bit unfortunate, but then again, for such a large piece of plastic, like as you can see, it just keeps going and going, and there's a nice detail, especially along the top end, you know, like different bolts and rivet details here. Luckily, the various pin marks that we can see are kind of well spaced out between details, so we should be able to get in there without damaging any of the detail. And it's exactly the same on this side. Again, really nice detail, but just a few pin marks. As you can see, I can't even get the whole thing in shot. It's that bloody massive, like, without bumping the tripod. And then we have where the crew basically are. This is like the crew compartment, for lack of a better word. Again, we have some embossed non-slip diamond pattern here. Again, I don't know how well you guys can see that. Detail's okay. Again, good engraved, some nice rivets. It's simple. It's quite simple. It's not going to be Tamiya or Dragon or even Thunder level crispness. However, I'm not too put out by that. I actually think this is going to be quite a cool model. And with that, that's all of the sprues of plastic. We also have a bag of a bit of twine. Don't need to see that, you know what twine looks like. So there you have my inbox review of Italeri's LCVP with Infantry. So in all, I'm pretty actually impressed by this kit. Just the size and the subject matter alone make this very interesting for me. I have a few ideas what I want to do with this. So one of them is actually just to model it with the crew in a seascape. I'm kind of taking the seascape I did a year or two ago to the next level and put into rough seas, because you know on June 6th they went in very choppy and very rough conditions. I think it would have a lot of character. However, another idea for this landing craft, I've been tinkering for a long time what to have on the back of my dragon wagon being towed. During the crossing of the Rhine, the US and British had to bring all their landing crafts from Normandy cross country across Europe to the Rhine to cross. Bear in mind the Rhine's a mile wide, so they basically had to do a full-blown like naval operation to get the men across the river. And apparently would actually like to have this on the back of basically on the trailer on my dragon wagon. So I have a few ideas, and I'd like to get your guys' input. Should I actually try to recreate this scene? There's a simple waterscape with the lads going ashore, or incorporate it into like a bigger project with a dragon wagon. I have a few. I'm in two minds really. But either way, in all this, it's a nice kit. So anyway, the Irish rain has found me, so we got away with it up until now, and we're also going to get slammed with a storm in a couple of hours. So guys, I better sign off. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you didn't mind me waffling along for as long as I have. I'm sure this has been quite a boring video, but again, I do like me and my landing crafts. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe, catch the next video, and bye bye.